I was walking across a narrow pedestrian bridge, and pondering what gift to choose for a friend. Nick had finally met his soul mate and decided to get married. We'd been friends since the army, and he'd invited me to be his best man. I'd been married a long time myself. Regina and I met at the hospital when I got there after the accident, and she was the nurse who took care of me during the day shift. She was so kind to me, and indeed to all the patients. But when she came into my room, I felt like our attraction to each other was mutual. Her angelic voice immediately struck me when I woke up, and she, standing next to me at that moment, asked me how I was feeling. I stayed in the hospital for a few days, and when it was time to be discharged, I gathered the courage and approached her with an offer to have a cup of coffee. And after finding out that she was single and not dating anyone, I decided not to miss my chance. We dated for about a year, then we got married. And now that I had a family of my own, I was genuinely delighted with the news that Nick had also decided to let a girl into his life who would complete his existence with a woman's care and love. I knew all his preferences and hobbies, but I wanted to give him something that would symbolize both our friendship with him and his marital happiness, and inspire a good future. I stopped in the middle of the bridge, leaned on the railing, and gazed thoughtfully at the ripples of the water below the river. I saw there a reflection of myself, of the sky, of the small clouds barely above, and of the birds flying in small flocks over the park, in the midst of which was the place where I now stood. I stood like that for a few minutes, until I was distracted by the phone ringing. Garrett. I answered it. It was my partner, who'd been on the force with me for a couple of years, calling to tell me that we were being called to a crime scene. Some girl had been murdered and found dead in her apartment by her roommate. Jesus, what happened here? I asked when I entered the apartment and immediately found my partner there. Several experts in special suits were already hard at work, while Doug Milan, my partner, was examining the entire crime scene, trying to find any clues. When I entered the apartment, I immediately smelled the usual corpse odor and something else that smelled like lavender. The body itself was in the bedroom, a young girl lying face up, with a thin silk woman's scarf tied around her throat, with which she had been strangled, but there were many bloodstains on the bed to her right. And on the hand itself, the forearm was missing an evenly cut rectangular piece of skin. Looks like our serial killer. Doug told me. I had already questioned the neighbor, and she admitted that the victim was a prostitute who often brought clients to her home. And she had a lotus tattoo on her arm. So, what? No leads again. No one saw who came in. Unfortunately. A neighbor who used to like to peek through her peephole to see who her roommate was having over was at a friend's house last night. She says the murdered woman was supposed to pay her back today, and when she came in and she didn't open the door, she listened and only heard a little dog barking. And what? She knocked for a long time and decided to call the police just in case. What kind of dog? The girl had a dog and she didn't protect it. Oh, you should have seen the dog. It's small, dressed up in a suit. It's just the name of a dog. Okay, did forensics find anything yet? Prints. There are tons of them. I told you she's been bringing different men here. It seemed to be the fourth unsolved case of a serial killer who had recently appeared in our city, whom we nicknamed the Collector because he cut out a piece of skin with a tattoo from each victim. He chose girls of easy behavior as victims, but usually, we found them either in a hotel, one was found near the park, and this is the first one we found at her house. But the MO was the same. The killer worked carefully, leaving no trace. The 3 victim files were still on our desk, and there wasn't a single clue that could even hint at who this person was. We stayed in that apartment for a while longer, doing our job. When we were done, we still had to go to the station, since the paperwork was still on the books. I got home a little later than usual. Regina was waiting for me for dinner. What's up, sweetie? How was your day today? Yeah, they found the girl with the carved tattoo again. Oh, my God. That asshole is such a scumbag. It's okay, honey, you'll catch him. You always catch killers. This is the fourth girl. And we still can't find anything on him. Regina came over and put her arm around me. Come on, I'll heat up dinner. She offered. While we were looking for this killer, I told Regina to be extra careful. But she said she was always careful, and she didn't fit the description of the maniac's victims. I don't have any tattoos, and I don't do what those girls do. So I'm not his type. She reassured me. But I always made her carry pepper spray for self-defense, and even offered her a gun, but she refused because she didn't like guns. Still, I was worried about her. She continued to work at the hospital where we had once met, driving her car there. There were cameras in the garage of their hospital, and a few guards at the hospital itself were always present. I was happy that my wife always worked the day shift and got home before dark. The weekend approached, for which my friend's wedding was scheduled. I remembered that I still hadn't bought him a gift, and as my partner and I were on a patrol car on duty, I noticed a small gift store. Come on, stop right there. I need something. My partner pulled over to the curb without any questions. So I went into the store, hoping to find something decent there. I walked around the display shelves for a few minutes looking at various souvenirs, but I couldn't decide on anything. Can I help you? A salesman came up to me quietly from behind. Yes. A friend of mine from the army is getting married. I'd like to get him something special. The salesman stood there for half a minute, holding his chin in thought, then motioned for me to come with him. Here. He pulled from the shelf behind the counter a statue of two small bears holding a hawthorn branch in their paws. I think this is just what you need. He briefly explained to me what the gift meant, and wished me happiness for my friend's future family. Wrapping the statue in a small bag, I hurried back to the car, from which my partner was already shouting at me. Somewhere not far from us a fight had broken out and we were called to go there, as we were the closest. So what did you get? Doug asked, turning on the siren and speeding up our car. Oh, yeah. A friend's getting married. I wanted to get something for him. I pulled a statue out of the bag and showed it to my partner. Very nice. He remarked, glancing at the road. When we got there, it was just a fight between some boys who were fighting over a girl, but one of them managed to stab the other with a small penknife. The victim's girlfriend called the police. We got there in time. The wound was not deep at all, I'd call it a scratch, but we took them both to the station for questioning and bandaged the cut on the victim's arm. So I had a good time at work. And when the day of the celebration came, I prayed to myself that nothing serious had happened. The chief and partner, I asked on this day that I was replaced by someone else if again it will be necessary to go somewhere on a trip. They were supportive and wished me a good celebration. The wedding day was sunny and warm, with just a light breeze giving the air a refreshing change. Nick's bride Dana looked like a princess from a fairy tale. After the solemn speech at the altar, I returned to the seat next to my wife, and the newlyweds went to take their place of honor at the guest table. She's so beautiful. Regina said. Yeah. I'm glad he chose her. I felt my wife's jealous eyes on me. But I still think you're the prettiest. Oh, you're a suck-up. She kissed me. The gala went splendidly. The guests celebrated cheerfully. Nick liked my present very much. He hugged me and patted me on the shoulder in a friendly way. Well, Nick. Goodbye, singlehood. Welcome to married life. Thank you, John. It was getting evening, and Regina and I were about to head home after saying our polite goodbyes. I hadn't drunk much at the party, just a little, as much as I was allowed, so I felt confident behind the wheel. My wife decided to give in to temptation, and let herself get tipsy to a decent dizziness in her head, especially since tomorrow she had a day off. We got home okay, but as soon as we got out of the car, she started clinging to me, trying to get me into bed. We liked to have good sex. I always liked what she did in bed. She really spoiled me this time too. As soon as we were done, my cell phone beeped. Oh, shit. Who the hell is that? I swore. Lazily reaching for the phone, fidgeting on the nightstand from the vibration, I looked to see who was bothering me at this late hour. It was Doug. Yeah. What's up? I asked in a tired voice. You're not going to believe this. He answered. It's our collector again. Oh, fuck. Doesn't he have a day off? I was cursing again. Okay, I'll be right there. Where is it? I'll send you the address. I'm sorry, darling, I have to go. Apologizing to my wife, I kissed her and went out of bed to pull on my pants. I arrived at the address at a hotel on the outskirts of town. The room in which the girl was found was not very far from the manager's office, and he, testifying, said that he thought he heard suspicious shouting. He did not go to check immediately, as he saw that the girl who had ordered the room was obviously not going there alone. But still, he had his doubts and decided to go and check. When he looked through the window, he saw a dead girl with blood spattered around her through the slit of the curtains. All I could see was an old gray Ford. No license plate, unfortunately. Added the manager. Not much. Looks like we're back to a dead end. I went back to my partner. Looks like it. He noticed something and moved closer to the bed with the body. He bent down, pulled a handkerchief out of his pocket and reached over to the foot of the bed, and pulled out a small mother-of-pearl button. I think there's something this time. He scrutinized what the girl was wearing, and did not see any parts with similar buttons. Tell me, he turned to the manager. When was the last time this room was cleaned? We have rooms cleaned every time visitors leave. So we finally have a lead. Doug said. Are you serious? A button? He looked at me only slightly critically. Yes, it was just a button, but if you tried hard enough, you could find something with it. Looks like the girl somehow managed to rip it off the perp's clothes, and we'll get it on file. We hung around the crime scene again for a while, and when I got home my wife was sound asleep. The next day, even though it was Sunday, I had to come to our station. There, our experts did a good job in their specialty and dug up some samples of clothes that were sold with such buttons. This, of course, was not enough. All the women's clothes were discarded, but there were still many variants. We discussed all sorts of options and conjectures for a long time, but we didn't come to anything concrete yet. I got home, but I noticed Regina wasn't home. I dialed her number. Hello, honey, where are you? A friend called me and asked me to come over. Why? Nothing. We were supposed to go to a restaurant tonight. Oh, yeah. I didn't forget. But you got called into work, and I didn't know if you'd be back in time. Usually, you're always late, and our plans are just plans. I'm sorry, honey, but you know how my job is. But I'm home now. So come on back. We'll go out for lunch. Okay. I'll be right there. I stayed home to wait for my wife. We didn't really get to go out all the time. I was called into work every now and then. But I loved my profession and I loved keeping order in the city, and my wife knew it. She tolerated it all, and usually never minded. While I waited, I turned on the TV in the living room to distract myself a bit. I didn't see anything interesting or new, so I went to my office to ponder the case among the papers piled up there. Regina arrived late. I glanced at the time, seeing that she was late, and called her several times, but she didn't pick up for some reason. I even became worried and remembered that I had once put a tracking app on her phone. Turning it on my phone, I saw that she was downtown and heading toward our neighborhood. Okay, well, if you're on your way, why the fuck aren't you picking up your phone? I muttered to myself. After a while, she came into the house. Where have you been? I pounced on her with questions. I told you. At a friend's. What are you getting so worked up about? But you're late. Oh, really? I might, for once, miss our date at the restaurant. Don't be sarcastic. I was worried. Why didn't you pick up the phone? I called you a few more times. I must have put it on mute. She nervously threw her purse on the table in the hallway and went to hang up her jacket. My stomach felt my intestines begging to be filled with food. But since Regina hadn't cooked anything since we were going to go out to lunch in town this morning, I decided to order pizza. You don't mind if we have pizza today, do you? I asked. Order it. I wouldn't mind it either. I did eat at my friend's, though. She treated me. I placed the order, which was going to arrive very soon. I was more hungry than ever. I went back to the living room and my wife wandered into the kitchen, and soon I heard her ramming the dishes, getting ready to prepare food for dinner. I noticed that she had come home a little out of sorts. At first, I wanted to ask what was wrong, but I realized from the look on her face that she wasn't going to answer me anyway. In all the time I'd gotten to know her personality and habits, but sometimes she still managed to keep little secrets from me. Mostly it was when she was preparing, like, a surprise for me or something like that. Today she was wandering around the kitchen more silently as if she was up to something again. After waiting for the pizza, I made myself comfortable on the couch and started devouring it, calling my wife over, but she refused so far, and I calmly ate half of it, almost immediately. An animal program I loved to watch started on TV, and it complemented my pizza eating perfectly. When Regina finally came into the room and sat down next to me, she seemed worried about something. Would you like a slice? I handed her the box. No. I don't want one. I put the box on the table and sat down close to her, just as I finished chewing a piece. Honey, is something wrong? I can tell you're worried about something. No, I'm not. I'm fine. It's just a friend of mine's in trouble. I'm worried about her. Oh, you're just so sad. I'm sure she'll be fine. What kind of problems? Is it serious? I'm sorry, but I can't tell you. It's a woman's business. All right. Suit yourself. I took another slice of pizza, realizing it would fit perfectly in my stomach, and continued my meal. Regina sat next to me on the couch and stared at the TV, which was showing us how predatory animals hunted their prey. For a while we continued to sit in front of the TV in silence, only occasionally exchanging a few phrases. Looking at my wife, how sad she was today, I even felt sorry for her. She was so worried about her friend that she was so sad herself. I'd love to help her, but Regina wouldn't tell me anything. After a while, her cell phone rang. When she looked at the number, she walked out of the living room, apparently not wanting me to hear her conversation. Who was that? I asked her when she came back. It was a friend. I told you she was in trouble. The next few days went by as usual. Me at my job, Regina at hers, evenings at home. But one day, me and my partner got assigned to another hit and run. We went on a call, just like we always do. This time two gangs got together, shooting at each other in a back alley. A few more patrol cars had managed to get to the scene as well. We watched for a while, picking our moment to attack. "I think I can get to the back of that one," said Doug in a confident voice. "Hey, Doug. Don't be a hero. Just wait. More backups coming. Just wait." But he was already sneaking behind the crates, trying to get close to one of the intruders, who looked like a gang leader. Doug tried to take him alive so he could arrest him, and then the others would be easier to tie up. But no matter how carefully Doug crept up, I saw him suddenly crouch down, and I could tell by the look on his face that he was in pain. I followed him despite the bullets flying overhead, crawling my way toward him. When I had a good view of him, I saw that he had taken a bullet. I rushed to him while shooting back at the criminals. And by some miracle, I managed to pull him back to the car without getting shot myself. "Oh, come on, man. I told you. Stay out of it." "I almost got him," he mumbled. I looked at his wound. The bullet had hit him in the side and seemed to be lodged inside. "You're not wearing body armor?" I wondered, knowing how careful he'd always been. "I didn't have time. I was in a hurry. I'm usually lucky," he muttered. "You're a fool." That's all I said. Then I radioed that the officer was wounded. I made my partner more comfortable and began to continue apprehending the criminals with the rest of the police in every possible way. Soon we were able to stop them. Half of them killed each other, but I had to shoot one of them when I noticed that he was aiming at a policeman from another car. And when the rest of them were handcuffed and put into cars, I didn't waste time, put my partner on the seat and turned on the siren, and drove at breakneck speed to the hospital. The closest was the one Regina worked at. But I, carrying my partner in my arms, started yelling that a policeman was injured and help was needed. All the available doctors and nurses immediately began to treat him, putting him on a gurney and taking him to the operating room. I was left waiting in the lobby to be told any results. At this point, I'd forgotten my wife even worked here. It wasn't until she came up to me that I snapped back to reality from worrying about my partner. "I heard what happened. I'm so sorry." She hugged me gently. It was such a stupid thing to do. He was always so careful. In all those years, his first injury. "It's okay. You know we have the best doctors here. I've heard rumors that his condition isn't that critical. I think he'll be fine. You'll see." She kept reassuring me. A couple of hours later, Doug was wheeled into the room. The doctor rushed to tell me that he was fine, but that he needed to stay in the hospital for a few days. I rushed to the room where he was being taken. Doug was still unconscious. "Just give him a minute. He was still under anesthesia," the doctor said, and after making sure everything was okay, he left. I got a call from our chief. I explained to him that I was at the hospital with Doug. I didn't have to be at the station yet, and I could stay with my partner, at least until he woke up. As soon as I finished talking, my wife walked into the room. "Oh. So you're going to take care of him?" I asked. "Yeah, he's on my watch list." "Well, then he's in good hands." She came closer, and I took her hand and squeezed it tightly. She stroked my hand with her other hand. "Don't worry. The doctor said he was going to be fine." A week passed. During that time I was given another partner who was very talkative, which, frankly, pissed me off a little bit. He was short, bald, and had a big potbelly because he liked to eat a lot of fast food. But he was brainy enough, and quickly got up to speed on the case Doug and I were working on. In the meantime, 2 more prostitutes were killed. Even our fake cop girls, who we had disguised and put temporary tattoos on, couldn't pick up the one we needed. It's like he could sense who he was targeting. We found our last victim in the park late at night, close to midnight. There was usually no one there at that time. But this time we were lucky enough to have a bystander, a drunken homeless guy. But he told us that he saw a tall thin man in a dark jacket molesting that girl, and saw her struggling with him, and even stuck something in his side, as he bent from the unexpected wound. But still, he finished the job. The homeless man said he saw him then lean over the victim and cut a piece of skin off her back. Not wanting to be killed too, he quietly got away from there, and when he got to a more crowded place, he informed the first person he met, who seemed to him to be a good citizen. He called the police. "Well, that's something," I said. "What exactly do you mean?" the fat partner asked me. "Now there's something to go on. We need to track down every trauma center that comes in with an injury like that." "You seriously think he's gonna go to the hospital knowing he's wanted?" I looked at him. "You know, I wouldn't do anything like that if I were him. It would get him caught right away." Maybe he was right. But just in case, we kept watching the hospitals. But so far, no one's come in with a wound like that. There was one similar case the next day, but it turned out that 2 friends had a disagreement over a meal, and the other one stabbed him in the side with a fork. There were several witnesses, so it wasn't our wanted man. The new partner was right. Our perp decided to keep a low profile. But if he did, he knew a thing or two about medicine, or at least how to treat a wound like that. At home, I shared my thoughts with my wife. Usually, I didn't hide anything from her, unless it was necessary for work. And I told her only the basics. I didn't tell her the details, so she wouldn't worry about me. The next day, I decided to visit my partner Doug once again. As I approached the room, I heard my wife talking to him, whispering the same gentle, soothing words to him that she had once spoken to me. I noticed that I even became a little jealous. But could she really afford it? It's probably my imagination playing tricks on me. Though I noticed that lately, she'd been pulling away from me emotionally. I didn't know why. She blamed it on problems with her friend and that she was worried about her. But I knew it was more than that. Without even knocking, I entered the room. Regina turned around as if she hadn't expected to see me. "Oh, John. We were just talking about you," she reported in. "Hey, Doug. How are you?" I walked up to him as if I hadn't heard what my wife said. "Yeah, as you can see, anxious to get back to work soon. Listen, your wife is an angel. She's so caring. I can see why you married her. She doesn't just give you bandages, it's like she heals you with words." "Hey, buddy. I'm glad you're okay." I was trying to hide my feelings of jealousy. After visiting him, it was late in the afternoon, just as my wife was finishing her shift, and we decided to go home together. While she was cooking dinner, I kept thinking about the latest developments in our relationship. Still, I couldn't stand it, so I decided to talk to her. "Regina." I walked into her kitchen. "There's something I need to hear from you." "Yes, sweetheart." She spoke in her usual angelic voice. "I realize we both have hard jobs. But it's never stopped us before." "I don't understand you," she replied, stirring the gravy in the pot. "I can see that you're a little distant from me. I can see that. And don't tell me it's about your friend. I wouldn't believe it." "What are you talking about?" "What do you mean, distant?" She took the pot off the stove. "I just feel it. Do you know? Between us, we don't have the same affection we used to have. Tell me honestly, is there someone else? What? Are you delirious? I heard you talking to Doug today. Is that him? Is it? You're having an affair with him. You're out of your mind with your job. How can you say that? He's your friend. He's not just your partner. Besides, how could you think that about me? Me? I could hear a hint of anger in her voice. Or maybe it was just the effects of my stress, which I felt every time we found a new victim with a cut piece of skin, and I realized I'd never catch him. Sighs, I'm sorry. You're probably right. I wanted to make things right. But Regina was very offended. We ate dinner in silence, and even when we went to bed, she just turned her back to me, wrapped in the blanket, letting me know that I wasn't getting any tonight. And how could I think that about my partner? But situations can happen. I've heard many stories, in which even in the most reliable marriages happen cheating. Sometimes such programs about life stories like to watch my wife on TV. Apparently, it was just in my memory, and now I just had a jumble of thoughts in my head because of my worries that there was still not caught murderer in town. But still, I started to follow my wife more, not in the sense of stalking her, but I started to listen more, to how and with whom she talks on the phone. I started to visit the hospital more often, under the pretext of visiting my partner, at the same time observing with whom and how my wife communicates. But so far I had no results. I even felt a kind of guilt toward Doug for thinking that about him. He was soon discharged from the hospital and was happy to return to his work. We were put to work together again. But my jealousy never left me, and I secretly watched even him. Except Doug really wasn't guilty of anything. He had nothing to do with my wife other than my wife giving him bandages at the hospital. Now I'm really confused about what I'm thinking. Why are you so sad? He asked me as we drove down the street in the patrol car. No reason. It's nothing serious. It's just sad that we haven't caught the bastard yet. I lied to him. The next weekend, Regina started going out again. How far? To a friend's house. I'll try not to take too long. Dinner's in the fridge if you need it. Just warm it up. She gave me a peck on the cheek and headed out. I noticed that every time she went to her friend's house, she tried to dress prettier. Yes, she was the kind of girl who always tried to look flawless, and even when she cooked, she never wore a simple housecoat. It was always in her nature to look beautiful. But it was when she was going to a friend's house that I noticed her diligent efforts to look her best. The thought occurred to me as I looked at her at the door and smelled her expensive perfume, which she used only on special occasions. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I went into the living room and sat on the couch in thought. Then I remembered again the app on her phone and turned it on. I saw a small red dot moving along the line, toward a distant part of town. After about half an hour, it stopped. I waited a few more minutes. Thoughts of jealousy started popping into my head again. I don't know why, but I decided to call her. It kept ringing, but Regina didn't answer. So I repeated it a few times. Looking at the app again, I saw that she was staying right where she left off. I didn't know what to think. The thought even crossed my mind that she might have fallen into the hands of that maniac we were chasing. I dialed Doug's number and asked for his help. After briefly telling him my suspicions that my wife might be in danger, I gave him her location but asked that if he arrived first, he make sure to wait for me. He promised me that he would, and without wasting another minute, I drove to the location indicated by the dot on the phone screen. When I pulled up, Doug was already there. He said he had arrived literally a couple of minutes before me. It was a private house. The neighboring houses were all a little far apart on this street. My partner and I, weapons ready, quietly approached the door. I hit the door with force, which made it swing open. We broke in, waving our pistols in different directions and looking around. There was no one on the bottom floor, and I heard some noise upstairs. I beckoned to my partner and we began to climb the stairs with our pistols at the ready. The second floor was not rich in the number of rooms, but rather the main area looked like a hall with a leather sofa, 2 large armchairs, a table, and a few vases with decorative plants. There were 2 doors on the floor. Both are almost next to each other. Opening the first one, we found only a small closet there, and without thinking, we rushed to the second door. I also kicked the door with my foot, and it too swung open at once. But what I saw gave me a terrible shock. And so did my partner. The room we had gotten into housed a large bed on which I saw my Regina making love to another man. I recognized him, it was the chief surgeon from the adjacent ward. But that wasn't the worst thing I saw. My wife was dressed in a leather suit for lovemaking, but it wasn't just any suit. It was made of pieces of leather with tattoos of our victims on them. I just staggered on the spot. Without lowering my weapon, I stared at them both. Regina only covered herself with a blanket when she saw me, and when she did, I saw a large scar on her lover's side that hadn't fully healed. "You bastards! Doug! Tie him up! That's him!" I yelled. Doug had been a martial artist since he was a kid, and he had no trouble twisting the scarred man. Meanwhile, I had my wife pinned to the bed, looking at her unusual attire. "What is it?" I asked her. "What are you wearing?" "You're a fucking whore." She just stared at me in silence. I called for backup. When the police arrived, they searched the whole house. In the basement, they found a special room with small tubs and solutions in which the surgeon soaked the pieces of skin to keep them looking good and not deteriorating. In his closet, they also found a dark jacket with one mother-of-pearl button missing. There were also bloodstains on the jacket, which we later found out was the blood of all the victims. We took him and Regina to the station. After a long interrogation, she admitted to me that she had been seeing him for months. But what struck me the most was her answer that she knew what the suit was made of and, more importantly, that she liked it. But she never gave a reason for her behavior. It wasn't until I did some investigating that I learned there were cases of schizophrenia in their family. They both went to jail for a long time. Regina is an accessory and the surgeon is our suspect in all those murders. After the trial, he was sentenced to death, and my wife, after being examined by a psychiatrist who found her sane, was given a long term in a women's colony in the Department for Especially Dangerous Criminals.